Guild Wars 2 PvP has always struggled to be taken seriously, especially in a competitive sense, but Ranked Season 13 has to be the absolute worst of the worst. Now, I don't usually make content like this. I don't use my mic. I usually just record gameplay or memes and shit, but with how unfun the game has become to me in its current state, I can't really do that. All I can do is just bitch about the game in the hope that it improves. So today I'm presenting the top 4 reasons, in my opinion, as to why Season 13 is the absolute worst, and giving my advice on how to fix these issues to steer the game back onto the right course, so I can record the game I love. And it goes without saying, but everything in this video will be my opinion. You're free to agree or disagree as much as you like. So, let's begin.
Hey, Big D. Beat up another 10-year-old?
This one deserved it.
Yeah. 5 against 1. Very brave.
Well, you're one to talk.
Duo queue. This is probably the most polarizing point that I'm going to present, but it matters still, as in my opinion, it's one of the contributing factors to the decline of Ranked. Duo queue at the highest level would not be an issue at all if the matchmaker was better, and if there was some sort of cap in how far apart 2 ratings can queue together. Anyone who plays PvP often knows just how broken the matchmaker is, even without duo queue. It can appear completely unfair and even random at times, matching mid-level gold players against top-tier players in the game. In my personal opinion, this is caused by a very low player population, specifically in the middle tiers, gold and plat 1, plat 2. The matchmaker seems to try to fit you in, just so you actually have to play, rather than actually trying to match you against people your rank. Duo queue throws an even bigger fork in this, as it now has to fit in 2 different people of ranks that might highly differentiate into a single match. This is where the matchmaker truly fails and sort of short circuits. It can place your duo stack anywhere without any regard for your rank at all. Now, funnily enough, it's usually the duo stack that draws the short stick here. They're the ones given the much lower ranked players on their side, and that usually ends in those teammates and the duo stack feeling cheated and upset. Now, this same exact thing happened in the first few seasons where duo queue was still a thing and people absolutely hated it, so they removed it. So to everyone today who supports duo queue and wouldn't mind it being implemented, I think I speak for everyone when I say it should have been revamped entirely and not added back in the same way they tried to do it over 10 seasons ago. The other big issue I have personally with duo queue is that it adds another gamble to Ranked. See, I uploaded a video just before the season started comparing the top tier players in their stacks to bullies ganging up on little children. It was mostly a joke at the time, but after the first month of Season 13 has passed, I am actually taken aback by how accurate it was. See, normally you join a game and the match is decided right there as you join, by the 2 factors. Did the shitty matchmaker give you good teammates? Did the shitty matchmaker match you against people much higher rank than you? Or much lower? Even if you finally pass one of these checks and you get a decent team, you stand to be matched with people much higher ranked than you. Or maybe you finally go up against people you could beat, but you have a team of intentional throwers and lower ranked players, so you still lose. Now we add this 3rd factor. Which team has the top 10 players that are stacked together? Because regardless of the first 2, that's a massive advantage. A top tier player on their own, like Valen or Nehru, could probably carry a game. But when there's 2 of them on the same team stacked together, coordinating with each other, talking to each other, calling out things, yeah, good luck. And I don't want to make these people seem like assholes, because a lot of them are actually really nice people. I mean it as a compliment when I say that they don't even need duo queue, because they're already good enough. If the player population was high enough to where they could both be matched with people appropriate to their skill level, then it would be absolutely fine. But in reality, how it's implemented, duo queue isn't like that. What it is this freeload for those players, and the pros abusing it, and it's a huge headache to everyone else who just wants to play ranked like it has always been. If you're one of these top tier players, and you're duo queuing with another top tier player, I really think you should stop, because with that coordination you could just go do ATs, and you'd get much better rewards, and you wouldn't piss off all these ranked players in the mid-tiers. Now, duo queue doesn't need to be removed outright, I don't think, unlike some of the other problems I'm going to talk about in this video. But what they should do is take it out temporarily and revamp it, or at least do something to incentivize people to play more ranked. That way, these players that are stacking with each other that are much higher rank don't get matched with golds and plats. That's the biggest problem, that's what needs to be fixed.
Because it's broken! Broken!
Matchmaker aside, there's a few long-standing problems with ranked in general that people have bitched about for years. How ranked is fundamentally broken could warrant a list on its own, as there's just so much to talk about, but I'll try to go over the major bullet points here. Number 1 on this list is rank gain and lost and how that's handled. This is what I believe annoys players the most over any other system in ranked. I've played Guild Wars 2 ranked since Season 1, and every season I always see people complaining about losing far more points than they're awarded for wins. And they're honestly correct. The way points are awarded in rank seems to be completely RNG. Personally, I average about -14 to -18 for a loss, and anywhere from 9 to 14 for a win. As far as I can tell, though it is hard, with seemingly how random it is, you're awarded points based on who you're matched with. But with how broken the matchmaker is, you always have to assume the game is expecting you to carry your entire team, and if you lose, even to people of a similar or higher ranking than you are going to be punished much harder than you'd be rewarded for winning. If you've ever felt trapped inside your ranking, this is exactly why, and this could be fixed so easily. Say you're getting top stats, but consistently losing games after games. That should be acknowledged, and you should lose slightly less. And if you're winning and getting all these top stats or carrying your team, you should be rewarded with much more points than you would for an average win. Another way entirely would be to take win and loss streaks into account. If you're consistently losing or winning games, that's a good indicator that you're playing far below or higher than what your rank would suggest, and therefore you get a small rank penalty or boost respectively. Other games already do this, like Paladins, that's another game that I play, and I've made videos on that. If ArenaNet wants to revive Guild Wars 2 ranked, they're gonna have to get with the program. They can't keep ripping off of Overwatch. Unlike Overwatch, Problem 2 is a bit different, but everyone already complains about this, so I might sound a little cliche here. I understand how hard it is for ANET to develop new game modes for this game. Conquest has always been and always will be the staple. Every other attempt like TDM and Stronghold were garbage, they failed miserably, and I don't think ranked at this moment needs to be shooken up even further with an entirely new game mode like that. Maps, on the other hand, are a completely different story. I feel the lack of variety has really taken its toll on ranked small player base. There have been no real additions in over a year, with the last two being Capricorn and Eternal Colosseum. Now, it's sad because both of those maps were, in my opinion at least, really great additions. Capricorn especially really changes how people have to play. And even if new maps don't do that, they would at least be a nice change in scenery. PvE players get new, fully fledged maps bi-monthly, while the much smaller in-scale PvP maps haven't seen anything new in over a year. It's just pathetic. My final point here before I move on will be toxicity and how Guild Wars 2 and ArenaNet approach it. It's been a very long, outstanding problem that I blame more so on ArenaNet than the actual players responsible. I want you, viewer, to ask yourself something real quick. How many games have you been in where a player on your team has said something like, "You guys suck, lol, GG," and sat and spawned the rest of the match, abandoning you to lose rank? How many of them have left or sat and spawned immediately without saying a single word in chat, as though they'd been paid to do it? See, it's not really about what they gain, whether they're being paid or just doing it to be an asshole. What are they going to lose by doing this? All ArenaNet is going to give them is a small slap on the wrist, in the form of a 3-day at max suspension. And if you think they're going to lose a bunch of rank for doing that they shouldn't be in plat because they're doing this, no, they're just going to lose the points from that game. What ArenaNet needs to do here is they need to step up how they punish these players way more severely. While leaving a game might at least spare your team from losing any points, the people who just sit there and purposely throw and don't bother leaving should be given huge, and I mean huge, rank penalties. I'm talking anywhere from -50 to -100. And the bans they get should be way longer, some even lasting an entire season's length. ANIT needs to put their feet down because these problems exist even at the highest level of play, when it shouldn't exist at all.
Hell yeah! I have the power of God!
Now, I'm recording this on October 2nd, 2018. The latest balance patch has just rolled in literally today. Considering the piss-poor state of the game has been in, balance-wise, for the entirety of the season so far, I think I speak for everyone when I say we expected a lot more. But no, we get nothing on this balance patch. October 2nd, 2018, we get nothing. Actually, in some cases, the exact opposite of what we might have expected. At this point, I have no faith in ArenaNet's PvP balancing team at all. In fact, I think it looks something like this. Ever since the time just before Path of Fire was released, they have been in a steady decline in how they're able to balance the game and make every class feel fun and fair. This has led to some of the most annoying, ridiculous states the meta has ever seen. Remember when Chronomancer was invincible? Infinite stability, infinite Condi cleanse, infinite healing, blocks, evades. Do you guys remember that? I remember that. And during that time, just from that one class overperforming, a lot of people outright quit the game, at least that entire season, permanently. Just that one class. Now we've entered the age of the burst meta, where all these specializations on screen you're seeing now are overperforming. So I have to ask you, how many people do you think are quitting now? In order to provide some sort of constructive criticism on how to fix these issues, I'm going to dissect the major offenders here. Deadeye, or Duty as I like to call it, Reaper, Scourge, Mirage, and sort of Herald, but to a lesser extent. We'll start off with Deadeye, which is pretty much ArenaNet's big contradiction of a class. With how ArenaNet feels about Deadeye, it's honestly appalling that it's gotten to where it is today. They've gone on to say plenty times that they never wanted a sort of bursty sniper class, but how do they fix their mistake? What they did was they reworked it so that it doesn't play like a sniper at all, but like a perma-stealth kill-shot warrior. Death Judgment is an unblockable attack that cannot be reflected by anything. It has the potential to nearly one-hit some classes, and it has no initiative cost. This is all compared to the hefty initiative cost it used to have before the class was reworked. Whereas now all you need to do to use Death Judgment is stealth, after which your target's only hope is dodging or some kind of evade or invulnerability. Let's say they hear the sound cue go off and they actually manage to dodge Death Judgment. With how Deadeye works now, they can pretty much stealth infinitely up to 6 times in a single fight if their build is set up right. They can even remove Revealed with their elite skill, which has 2 charges. Taking all these problems into account, you would assume they would nerf Death's Judgment, or at the very least, nerf Thief's stealth capabilities, or more specifically, Deadeye's. But no. The major nerf we got here, well, major with air quotes, is a nerf to double tap / 3-round burst. Now, I'm not saying it's a terrible nerf, okay? It does do something. It hurts their ability to build up malice, and it makes Death Judgment essentially less effective. But it's not the nerf we needed. Right now, Deadeye is just so unfun to fight for any other class. It doesn't matter what you're playing, fighting a perma-stealth Deadeye is just so annoying. What really needed to be nerfed was Death Judgment and the stealth capabilities, as I said before. Actually, scratch nerf, okay, because Deadeye is the one class that I think right now needs to be nuked into nothing. This class shouldn't even exist, quite frankly. ArenaNet has even said it themselves, they don't even like this class. So I'm going to do my best to give them some tips. How do we fix Deadeye? Well, first of all, these are just solutions. I'm not saying that all of these should be implemented, but maybe just some, so that this class is more in line and fun to fight. One, what I think is a simple solution, is giving Death's Judgment an initiative cost, and removing the little nerf they did that gives double tap and triple, whatever you call it, triple tap, extra initiative cost. Another way they could fix this is making Death's Judgment blockable or reflectable, because as it stands now, you can only evade or invulnerable to get away from it. Or if they don't want to nerf Deadeye, which this is a sound solution, hear me out, without nerfing Deadeye, they could give other classes more effective and reliable ways to apply Revealed. And finally, the Deadeye Elite skill should not remove Revealed, as Revealed is already hard enough to apply in any sort of way. Giving them that ability to just shake it off and instantly stealth is a bit overpowered. I'll go over the next two classes together, Reaper and Scourge, and I'm about to trigger a lot of people here, and I'll start off by saying that Necro is probably the most unimpressive, boring class someone can play in this game. Scourge is slightly more the case than Reaper, as Reaper is slightly more impressive. At least they were before all the buffs they just got. Real quick, let's talk about those buffs, because I'll say it now, Reaper did not need those buffs at all. The biggest and most questionable decision they made was giving Reaper perma-quickness. ArenaNet has sort of been at war with passives and trait abilities, so why they would go ahead and give them such a strong passive ability when they've nerfed Warrior and all their passives for like the past 5 patches is just beyond me. Reaper especially doesn't need some super strong passive. They already have the highest DPS and boonstrip in the game. I think we all expected Reaper to maybe get nerfed this patch, but no, they got buffed even further with an increased 25% movement speed. Scourge is a different story because they actually have been nerfed a lot in the past few patches, and they haven't gotten any attention lately. But despite all that, the class still probably needs tuning or maybe a complete rework. While Deadeye might be the most unfun class to play against, Scourge is both unfun to play against and the most unfun class to actually play. All the class really is just spamming AoEs whilst running around trying to kite, to which it's effective at doing that, especially with a firebrand on your team. But it's just so boring, this class, and Condi in general is already the lame, boring way to play the game, but Scourge takes it to a whole new level just sitting there spamming circles on the ground. Now, in what ways is this OP, you might ask? Well, it doesn't take much skill to just sit there and spam circles. Okay, everyone else who's playing their class is probably trying to some extent. When they're fighting a Scourge, they can't even stand still. If they down somebody, nobody can revive that down player because they'll just be spammed with circles underneath them. Another thing is, you're going to have to remove these Condis somehow, because they will burn you down extremely fast, as most of them are Torment and Burning from the Doomfire trait. Problem is that there's only 2 ways in the game to get rid of conditions, and that's either to directly cleanse them or to apply resistance. And given how Scourge can boonstrip almost as reliably as Reaper, this is a huge problem. It's likely if you manage to apply resistance to yourself, it won't even matter, as that will probably be stripped in a matter of seconds. This sort of synergizes with the other major problem I mentioned earlier, which is duo Q, as a Reaper and a Scourge are, together, the 2 best mid-fighters there is, as the Reaper can instantly strip away any resistance, and the Scourge can sit there spamming conditions and AoEs. It can get even more ridiculous if their team has a Firebrand, as that's going to heal away all the damage you're doing, and at the same time it's going to buff Necro with stability. And if you don't know, one of the only ways to effectively counter Necro is to CC them, as they're very weak to it. But how are you going to do that when they have stability? So what are the solutions here? 1, I think Scourge needs to be reworked. Not Deadeye, but Scourge. Make it more involved to play and less boring. Scourge's boonstrip needs to be weakened or completely removed, as Reaper already has that covered. If you want boonstrip, go play Reaper. If you want Condi AoEs, go play Scourge. And for Reaper, I think every buff made in the last 2 patches needs to be revoked, removed. Reaper was already in a good place. It doesn't need perma-quickness, and it certainly doesn't need to move faster. Another thing they could do, which I've already just mentioned, is they should nerf Deadeye, as Deadeye is one of the things that can counter Reaper and Scourge the hardest. If you remove Deadeye's capability to do that, you don't need these classes so overpowered. And finally, when you log into PvP after all these changes come through, all Scourge players have to agree before playing that there's no such thing as a pro Necro, as it's so easy and face roll to play. Mirage. Specifically, Condi Mirage, because Power Mirage actually takes some skill, and for some reason was nerfed in their many attempts to tone down its easy, boring Condi Mirage cousin. See, it's easy to respect a Power Mirage, because that actually does take a lot of skill and devotion to play. It's not like Scourge where you just sit there and spam shit. It takes quick movements, quick wit, and good game sense. But unfortunately, nobody really plays it because Condi is arguably much stronger, and definitely, without any argument, way easier to play. Dodging the break stuns is way too OP, their constant blinds are way too OP, and unlike Power Mirage, Condi gets access to even more evades while attacking. Not that Mirage already has a fuck ton. It isn't the least bit fair to fight, or at least it doesn't feel that way, especially for duelists, as the only duelist class that can effectively counter a Condi Mirage is Warrior, and it's still kind of a hard fight for them. Ranger, Hollowsmith, Thief, and I don't mean Deadeye, I mean Thief, how it's meant to be played, Daredevil, they all get hard countered by these Condi Mirages, and every single patch, their ability to remove conditions gets smaller and smaller. And I get it that Condi is the bigger way to play Mirage right now, and if it stays, that's fine. There should be at least one Condi class in the game. I mean, it is another way to play. I just think there should be more opportunities to actually land hit on a Condi Mirage, and at the same time, I think every single class should have some way to deal with conditions better. I'll close this whole point with Herald, as it's really hard to call it overpowered, because a while ago Rev was the weakest class in the game, but now it's so strong that I sort of can call it overpowered. It needed the rework, and it needed the buffs that came with it. What it didn't need was anything beyond that, and that's exactly what it got with this last patch. To the average Rev, this seems like nothing, but since Rev has such a high skill ceiling, that's sort of been lowered with the last patch, that if there are players that were good at playing Rev before, now it's essentially easy mode for them. I mean, more damage, really? Like, come on, they already have two abilities that pretty much one-hit anyone, and those abilities can be unblockable if the Rev sets it up right. It sort of goes back to what I put on screen earlier. If you were good at playing Rev before, it's essentially easy mode now. So I think toning down their damage just a little bit, not too much, because this is the least overpowered of all the overpowered classes that I've mentioned, but just a little bit would help kill the burst meta. Now I should mention too that when I say poor balancing, the major bullet point here, that I'm not talking about just what's overpowered. What about the underpowered underdogs? Ellie, Warrior, and pretty much all the other Heart of Thorn specs. Oh right, and Renegade, I almost forgot that was a thing. All these classes and subclasses, when it comes to patch day, either get a buff that really doesn't do anything, or an unnecessary nerf. I think that people who main these classes have just as much right to be upset as everyone else affected by what is overpowered right now. I could go on about balance forever. I've talked about it long enough, that's all I'm going to say. It's time to reveal the biggest reason why Ranked Season 13 sucks.
You get it? I want nothing to do with you! Ever since I met you, everything I have ever cared about is gone. Ruined, turned to shit, dead ever since I hooked up with the great
ArenaNet.
I have never been more alone. I have nothing! No one! Alright, it's all gone!
Alright, this has to take the cake as the stupidest decision ArenaNet has made for ranked PvP in a while. The only possible excuse I can come up with in my head is that they knew well before this season started, and just like the rest of us, that it would be total garbage, not taken seriously by anyone in the PvP community. Let's theorize for a minute, and let's say that you endure the other 3 problems that I've talked about so far. You get through the season, and you place in the top 250. Despite the awful balancing, broken ranking, toxic players, and exploitative, shameless bully, you somehow made it to the top, even if just barely, and the time has come for your hard work and dedication to be rewarded with, wait for it, a large potion of PvP reward. In other words,
So you get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
but seriously, let's be real. You don't get anything to show off for your hard work that got you to the top 250 in the first place. You just get a shitty potion that's worth, by the way, I did the math, and it's worth 10 daily potions. Or, if you really get high on the leaderboard, a Champion's Pass, ooh, which is basically a less convenient Mistlock Sanctuary. You might think with how bad I'm making it sound that everyone would be with me, that they would say, keep titles. But no, actually, people have long been considering that titles be removed, and I'm forced to question you here. If you don't support titles being there, can you, as a player, really go into ranked and expect people to give it their full attention and effort if they get nothing unique to show for their effort? Like, if I can get more gold just for playing, why should I give a fuck? Why should I put up with all ranks problems? As it stands, you could go into every game and just throw, and you'd still earn pips towards reward chests that can give you up to 20 gold, versus trying the entire season, enduring every other problem I've mentioned so far, for maybe at most 2 gold. That's what that large portion of PvP reward is gonna get you. It is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, seriously, what's the point in removing the small bit of recognition that PvP players can get? Well, the majority of you people that are against titles seem to think that it stops win trading. For one, it hasn't done that. There's still plenty of win traders in the game, trust me. For two, ArenaNet doesn't consider win trading a real problem, as they offer rebuttal and just blow off people complaining about it on the forums. Which brings us to point 3, you are punishing the entire PvP community for the actions of what you claim is a small minority of win traders. Instead of doing that, and this might be a very foreign concept, this might blow your mind, but maybe you should just ban those win traders, those idle players, just ban them, because doing so would have, if anything, a positive effect on the PvP community. So I'm just going to rule out your little excuse. It doesn't stop win trading. So what else is there on the other side of the argument?
Being the leaderboard titles getting revoked. That might seem kind of weird to you guys, and you might not like it, but I'm actually in favor of this one almost fully. I think that's a bit of a shame, particularly if you haven't played in the first 13 seasons. You've now lost out on this forever. But I'll note a few points in favor of this idea. Number one, Guild Wars 2 is no stranger to this. There's an enormous number of historical achievements. It's kind of ingrained in the game's DNA right now. But the other side is many of these titles were kind of RNG fests anyway. The real state of leaderboard progression and trying to snag those top spots in PvP involved a heavy amount of dice rolling. One loss, you could lose so much rating so quickly, you'd be completely out of the top 30 when a mere Q or two ago you were jostling for first to third. Then all the people popping up on the leaderboard right in the last moments to try and snag the spots. It wasn't really that healthy.
Alright, first of all, I don't like calling out WP. I think he's a great guy, and I definitely recommend you go and check out his channel, as he's done a lot for Guild Wars 2 as a game. Not only just the PvP side, but every side of the game. He's great at promoting it, and providing feedback on some of the balance changes, and he's been very helpful to players, myself included. Unfortunately, WP, I am forced to disagree with you here. You have a small point that the formula for determining ranked is fundamentally broken, and that ranked itself is sort of a dice roll, as I've mentioned. I just don't see how that justifies removing titles altogether as a reward. Why should everyone who might have been chasing these titles for over 10 seasons suddenly be punished because of ArenaNet's incapability to make a fair and functional, balanced, competitive system?
And I really don't think we'll burn any super dedicated players and people in that matchmaking pool just because those titles are gone. Hopefully the devs give us other rewards and other incentives for doing well and build that population up a little bit more.
I mean, I guess they could add something in place of titles. They could add different rewards that actually give you some kind of advantage in game, like new exclusive armors, weapons, but that would encourage even more win trading than titles did. And that would draw in so many new players that, given the matchmaker's tendency to mismatch people, that would pose a serious problem to existing players. See, the fundamental issues that you mentioned with rank would first have to be fixed before we could allow these new rewards.
I'd also suggest that titles, really, in Guild Wars 2 today, with so many of them, I don't think people look at that much.
So the most you could argue is that titles are meaningless. This being due to the previous states of the game, and I consider this the only valid point. Sometimes ArenaNet buffs Chrono to be unkillable, and some seasons are just worse than others when it comes to win trading. J Action, aside from being one of the best Rev players out there, actually brings up a really good point and flaw against your argument. The easiest solution here, they could change the titles to be season-based, sort of like games like Fortnite, change their rewards every season and stick to some sort of theme for that season. What this would do is it would help distinguish people who earn their titles during the seasons that actually mattered versus the seasons where ArenaNet decided to just zone out and have one of their non-flashbacks. Jay also goes on to imply that this would be after ranks problems are fixed. Well, that was all the way back in Season 10. Yikes. Here we are in Season 13, and we've regressed about 11 seasons instead of making any sort of progress towards that. But you know, if titles are so meaningless, their removal in general shouldn't be a problem to you. You shouldn't be so in favor of that. If they mean nothing to you, they mean nothing. There's zero to lose by keeping them there. They only serve as a balanced reward for some players to strive for. And, sorry WP, but not wanting those unfilled achievement boxes there isn't a valid reason to be in favor of removing titles. That's just OCD. So those are the 4 major problems that have made Season 13 the worst, the most unbearable SPvP season so far. Instead of ending it here, having only criticized ArenaNet and several other players, I want to take the time to propose some solutions, and I want to make it clear that I criticize ArenaNet and their game out of love. Guild Wars 2 has been my favorite game for the longest time, and while I love the PvE side of it, the PvP provides an unpredictable challenge entirely different to the base game or World vs. World. Seeing it on the decline hurts, and I just want it to get better. So how do we fix these 4 major issues? First of all, duo queue. I think duo queue needs to be temporarily removed, emphasis on temporarily. Playing the game entirely by yourself might not be so fun, but the player count needs to be higher, and the matchmaker needs to be better to ensure the top tier players can't stack and unfairly decimate the competition. Even if that means outrageous queue times on the duo queue's behalf, they should expect it based on what they're doing. If ArenaNet is truly incapable of presenting duo queue in a balanced way, it should be scrapped entirely. We've survived nearly 10 seasons without it, and ATs exist for those highly coordinated, highly skilled teams, which offer far better rewards for that level of coordination. The fundamentals. Rank gain and loss needs to be tweaked so that the game isn't always expecting you to carry. There should be more boosts and penalties based on personal performance rather than the entire system being one big dice roll, where 1 step forward is made before taking 2 steps back. More maps need to be steadily added to the game, and I mean the PvP side. PvE is already good there. Win traders, idlers, and leavers need harsher punishments. Their little slap on the wrist isn't going to do anymore. These people need huge rank penalties, and bans that can last up to an entire season. Balance. The balance team behind PvP sucks dick. They either need to be replaced or spend more time and effort testing how they tweak classes. I've already listed what I believe are some of the major problems they need to fix as soon as possible, so I'm not going to go over it again. Titles. Titles need to be re-added back to the game as soon as possible. They could even set themes for seasons and titles that would encourage people to try their best depending on how fucked the game is during that time. Furthermore, everyone who has suffered through Season 13 and found their place on the leaderboard, I believe, is entitled to whatever title they would normally get. I understand that some people disagree with me here, as so many people have quit or just aren't taking the season seriously at all. So, all top 250 right now didn't really earn their position. But the removal in the first place was such a huge cop-out that all 250 of those players will end up feeling very cheated otherwise. That's all I'm doing for this video. I didn't really want to make it in the first place, or invest the time, as it's not really my style. I don't like bitching for extended periods of time, but in the end, I don't like the state of the game more. It's made it a lot more difficult to play and especially record for, because I really just don't want to touch it. I've made no plans to make any more content like this. My mic is pretty shit and I can't work without a script. But uploads in my normal style will definitely slow down if the game doesn't improve. I want to thank you all for watching, especially until the end. I'm going to have more highlights out soon and get back to doing what I love.